This is a video of a 2025 Get to the River Festival 3-mile round-trip paddle on the Jordan River in Utah from Porter's Landing in North Salt Lake to a bird's nest platform in the Legacy Nature Preserve and back. The Get to the River Festival is a month-long festival held each September along Utah's Jordan River with a fun variety of free activities hosted by the Jordan River Commission and communities and organizations along the river. This river section borders the Legacy Nature Preserve on River Right, which is a bird preserve of about 2,200 acres of wetlands and playa, or irregular wetlands, that were purchased and preserved by the state of Utah when the bordering Legacy Parkway State Highway was built in the 2000s. The reserve is closed to the public, but the Jordan River is still a public waterway. Porter's Landing in North Salt Lake is the last downstream public river access spot on the Jordan River. But the public water trail continues for another 3.6 miles to Burnham Dam. So if you want to paddle all of this river section, you would need to do a 7.2-mile out and back paddle, with half of that being paddling upstream against the gentle current to get back to Porter's Landing. But another option is to just paddle 1.5 miles downstream from Porter's Landing to the bird nest platform next to the river in the Legacy Nature Preserve, then turn around and paddle back to Porter's Landing for a 3-mile round-trip paddle, which is what we will do today.
This is the Porter's Landing boat takeout. It's called the boat takeout because it's the last place you can take your boat out of the river before you go into the Legacy Nature Preserve. The cool thing about the preserve and the river is that the preserve, even though it's closed to the public, the river is sovereign land. That means it's owned by all of you here today. It's public land, and so we are allowed to float into the preserve on the river. We are not allowed to get out and go into the preserve without permission, which we actually do get permission, but if you came on your own, you wouldn't be able to do that. But they are doing some construction where we have been taking out in the past, and so we've had to adjust our plans for today, and so we're doing an out and back paddle. The cool thing about this experience today is that any of you here today, after you've gone and done it with us, you can come back and do it on your own. It's a very gentle section. We'll be going through a little trash boom, which is the only one that's on the river. It collects all the trash that's been floating down the river before it goes into the Great Salt Lake. So it's an interesting little feature, and we're looking at seeing how we could potentially put more of these on the river to help us with our efforts to keep the river clean. The Legacy Nature Preserve is a really cool space to go into. We'll see lots of birds, a lot of cattle. They use them to help manage the invasive species there, and it actually works. If you've come on paddles in other sections, you'll see Phragmites lining the river. You can't even see out of the river channel because there's so much Phragmites. This section, you're not going to see the Phragmites like that. You're going to see coyote willow. You might see some Russian olive and some other things, but you're not going to see that Phragmites. And you end up getting these really beautiful views. Pay attention to how quiet it is. There's no roads nearby, and so you get this extra little piece of nature. And we're not that far away from the city. Like I said, we're going to be paddling downstream, but then we're going to be turning around at 1.5 miles. There's an eagle landing platform. The eagles used to have a nest on there. They've now have their nest in a nearby tree, but they still use the platform when they're doing hunting and that sort of thing. So I saw them in June, so they are around. If we're lucky, we might be able to see them today. I've seen owls and kingfisher and night herons and all sorts of birds on this section of river. So a really cool app that I like to use is the Merlin Bird app. How many of you have heard of that? If you haven't heard it and you're interested in like knowing what the birds are, I would recommend downloading that. It can listen to bird calls and it'll tell you what the bird is. if there's multiple birds talking, it can differentiate and it'll highlight. It'll say, okay, this one's talking, it's this kind of bird, this one's talking, and it does it all live. It's really cool. You can also do it by like going through a step-by-step thing that you say, it's this size bird, it's this color, I saw it in the river, and then it'll give you options. So that's a really fun thing that you can use while we're out here. And again, this is just a really special section of the river. And as far as how far you want to go, we'll be going to that nesting platform, which is 1.5 miles, and then we'll be paddling back upstream. It does take a little bit of effort to do, but it's not impossible. I had a woman in her 70s do it with me in June, and she was able to get back. And so that's your motivation. As far as paddle skills and this section of river, it is a very gentle flow, slow flow. You know, you may still find yourself getting pushed into things, so always be aware of where your boat's pointing, especially when we have a big group like this. That's like the biggest challenge, is just having so many boats. So give yourself space. You know, you can be next to your friend and you can be chatting, but you know, give yourself space around other groups, because there may be sections where a tree's or a limb's falling down the river and we have a tight spot that we all need to go through. We want to give ourselves space so that we don't get a little bottleneck, and that's when we run into problems. And as far as paddle skills coming back upstream, your boat may want to turn you back. You may feel that need, so just keeping like a nice consistent paddle stroke going up so that your boat keeps that momentum. Otherwise, you may feel it like wanting to turn you. So if you just keep your momentum going, then that works. With life jackets, it is the law that you have to have a life jacket on. So you need to make sure that you have it zipped up, and if there's any fasteners, you need to buckle those. And you want to make sure that it's tight enough that if you lift up, it's not going to go up over your ears. The reason that is if you go in the river and we need to bail you out, we need to be able to pull you up with your life jacket. We don't want you sliding out of that jacket. Okay? So everybody make sure you're wearing your life jacket correctly, and we will hit the river. So thanks.